Hi, guys. My name is Theo Dillon, and welcome back to a Dose of Hope podcast. Today, we're going to do a little bit on my story and about my addiction, what it was like before, going through it, and after, and just really getting to know me. We got to know Michael last week, and this time around, we're just going to focus on my story. It really starts off way before I ever picked up a drink or a drug or anything like that. It started off, when I was a kid. Uh, probably, probably like the abnormalities started, I think, when I found out or really started to understand that I was adopted. Um, there was a tangible difference between myself and people around me, like peers, friends, the connection they had with their parents. I don't know if it was in my head or whether it was real, but I just didn't feel like I had a very similar connection. And consequently, this showed in a lot of my behaviors in school, with friends, and it really does go to show that that cliche that, again, the addiction starts much before the usage is true. I would act out in class. I was constantly in the principal's office. I was always getting in trouble. If you and I were having fun and we, kind of like roughhousing, I always had to take it too far to the point where one of us was not having fun. Or a video game. If we were playing video games, I always had to take it to that next level where it just stopped being fun. If I felt good, I had to keep feeling good. If I was hanging out with my friends, I would be the last person to go home because I didn't want that fun to end. And this developed over time into crazier and crazier behaviors, just acting out. I remember being like probably 10, 11 years old, I want to say, and just starting to do things that I wasn't supposed to just for the rush, just for the feeling of doing something that I knew I wasn't supposed to be doing. Um, and that feeling was addictive. Like I just wanted to keep pushing the boundaries, and I was a very curious kid. And it's extremely unfortunate because another cliche, I was a very gifted, I was a very talented child. I had a lot going for me, not only in the academic department, but the athletic department as well. I was a really, really good soccer player. I had a couple like all-star accolades in high school. I took the SATs at 12 years old. I did really well on it. I had a pretty high IQ, and despite all of this, despite all these things I had going for me, I still chose my curiosity and the rush that my curiosity kind of gave me, instead of what a normal person would look at and say, this is what you should be doing. Focus on the good grades that you're getting. Focus on the soccer. You have D1 schools that are interested in you. You have an academy in Europe that's interested in you playing for them. Why are you going out and smoking pot? Why are you going out and throwing all that away? And at the time, I didn't have an answer. I just knew it was what I wanted to do. And instead of, I think all at 14, 15, 16 years old, we're all kind of in that headspace of I would rather do what feels good right now than what's best for me long term. And it ended up showing. I kind of my senior year I didn't really play high school soccer because I kept showing up to practice on fucking acid. I would be tripping balls playing soccer on the field, and I was still all right, but like I wasn't who I was supposed to be on the field. I was putting ketamine in water bottles to go to school and drinking ketamine in the bathrooms at school. I was smoking weed at school. On the days where I didn't bring drugs to school, I would smoke cigarettes in the fucking bathroom just to say fuck you to the school because they eventually got on my ass. And this whole time, I began losing my family. I began losing my friends. Everybody, you know, is doing what's best for them, I would say, and distancing themselves. And I realize that now. But in that moment, it feels very isolating, and it feels like everybody's turning their back on you. And um, yeah, that feeling, man. I think of having these people that are supposed to care about you, and having these people that you think are supposed to care about you, and that you feel are supposed to be there through thick and thin, and people that have told you that they'll love you no matter what, to feel them turn the cold shoulder. And even though it is out of tough love, like I didn't understand that at the time. So it felt like at my worst point that everybody that was supposed to be there, kind of turned away and kind of left me to my own devices. And it's a fucked up feeling. I had a couple friends who stuck around, and we'll get to that part in a little bit. But it was mostly my brother Axel and my best friend Connor. Those two guys stuck around, and shout out to them. I fucking love them to death. Probably wasn't what was best for them or myself at the time, but there are definitely days where I would hang out with them, and it stopped me from doing something that probably would have altered my life forever or even ended it. And I would say this is around we're getting to like senior year now. So senior year, like I said, stopped playing soccer. About halfway through the year, they pulled me into the office and they're like, "Look, man, you're showing up to school like once a week. Like, what can we do?" And instead of me seeing that as them reaching out a helping hand at the time, I saw it as like, I'm gonna take this a step further and just say, "Fuck you. There's nothing you can do." Like just that whole attitude of my life's already over. I've decided it's over, and that's how I want it to be. And um, so my parents and the school coordinated. The school actually wanted me out so bad, Bordentown in New Jersey. They actually wanted me out of that school so bad they paid for me to go to an alternative school. And this alternative school, man, it was fucking something else. I would not have graduated without them. So thank you to the technical school, but at the same time, it was insane. Like you would go in, you didn't like attendance didn't really fucking matter. You kind of showed up when you wanted to. You would sit down and do like a worksheet, and like for an example, like if you did like a fucking word search, that would be like a credit towards your English grade. And so needless to say, I only had half a semester left, so I was in there for like a month or two, and even that I almost fucked up. On my last day of school, I brought a bunch of fucking acid to school because why the fuck not? And this is right when I started selling drugs, so I was selling acid to everybody in the school. I had planned it. My last day of school was going to be the day that they went on this rock climbing field trip, and it was my last gym credit I needed to graduate. So we go on this rock climbing field trip. I'm fucked off on acid. About everybody else that's in my friend group was fucked up on acid because I sold it to him and gave it to him. And I remember it was actually a great last day of school. I hate to say it, but I remember climbing up this fucking rock wall and getting to the top to where you couldn't climb anymore. And then, like I would jump off, and instead of like clinging to the rope, I would just fucking like flail off this fucking rock wall, man. And that got some attention. Some teachers, some students started talking, and word got around that there was a bunch of acid going around. So, needless to say, they pulled me in the fucking office on my last day of school. They're like, "Look, man, we know what's going on. Like, we got to patch you down." And I just looked at them and I was like, "You don't have to do this." And they were like, "No, we do have to do this. It's our job." I was like, "Fuck." And so they patted me down, and by the grace of fucking God, I can only imagine that's what it was. They pat right over that acid that's in my pocket, which is like a bunch of acid, all wrapped up in this little tinfoil thing. And they're like, "Well, we didn't find anything, so what the fuck can we do?" So that reinforced that feeling of invincibility I had. At this point, I had not been arrested yet. I didn't really give a fuck about anything. I started selling drugs a lot more. I had like this weird part-time job at McDonald's, but I quit pretty soon after I got robbed for the first time at gunpoint from selling drugs. I just, you know, I was not raised in the hood, but I felt like I belonged there for some reason, and I belonged selling drugs there, and I got humbled real fast. Got a gun to the back of my head and to the back of my buddy's head, who I saw as like a little brother at the time. And that I don't even think I cared about getting the gun pointed in my head because I didn't care about much at that point. But seeing how it affected him, I think that kind of was like, all right, I'm not gonna be that crazy anymore. And later on that year, since I had graduated high school like early, it's just like small time selling drugs, as soon as I turned 18, I went to one of the body brokering rehabs out here in LA because my parents wanted me to go to rehab. I wanted to make a couple $1,000s, and it was a situation where they were running my insurance and scamming my insurance to pay me money to sit in their facility, and it was just a fucking awful experience. They did not take care of us. I only learned how to do worse drugs. My usage definitely when I returned like 2 months later in August was just 10 times worse. And at that point, like I really, didn't give a fuck about anything because my entire family was like cut me off. I was bouncing around friends' houses when I got back from rehab, and I would pretty much just get all my buddies into a car who were kind of my buddies, kind of not. We just wanted to get high together, and we didn't do anything crazy, but I mean, like violence or anything like that. But we would get into this fucking little beat up Volkswagen I had, and we would drive down to Philadelphia, trip acid there, do a bunch of ketamine there, drive back up to New York later that night, do a bunch of acid, ketamine there, and then just do that for 2 or 3 days and just be some fucking random teenagers tripping balls all over the East Coast. And it was, good times there. But looking back, probably I was on psychedelics and ketamine and at times cocaine, driving around a bus full of other teenagers, you know. So it definitely was not the safest things that I was doing. They're fun stories to tell, but they're, at the same time, it was, looking back on it, I'm not sure how I'm still alive just from that alone. Um, just not good, not clear thinking. I'll put it that way. And so I kind of get to the point where, okay, I turned 19, and this is about a year later. I realized like this isn't sustainable. These drugs aren't sustainable. Like I'm just wasting my life. I want to make money, and so I get a job as a dishwasher. And this job as a dishwasher was probably the first job I ever cared about. And I got in the kitchen. I started cooking, and I kind of fell in love with it. It was probably the chaos that I was in love with, but I cooked for a couple years, and in this time, like I kind of cut back. I got to a point where I was like, if I want to be efficient, like I can't be on acid. I can't be on shrooms. I can't be doing that shit. And I did well. I did pretty well as a chef. I made more money than a 19-year-old should have. I was saving a lot of money. Um, and it was all going really well. I was just drinking, and by just drinking, I should clarify that that was like a 12 pack a night after work. So not healthy, like not just partying, not just having fun. I was still an addict, but I was a functional addict. I had gotten to that point. Um, and this is all going well up until like my 20th birthday. And my 20th birthday, um, it was the last, it was the last birthday I had with my brother here. A week after my 20th birthday, my brother took his own life. Axel, he had been battling with schizophrenia for a while, and there was a lot of guilt and shame around that. Um, there was a lot of guilt and shame, and that was hard to deal with. I didn't know how to deal with it. He was the closest person in my life. He was that one, like I said in the beginning, the Connor and Axel. It was those two that just never went away, and he was probably the closest person in my life, and to lose him at that time just felt like a big fuck you. It was like you finally got to a point where you have a decent job. You finally got to a point where you're just drinking. You're not going out and doing all this crazy shit, and that happened, and everything that was normal became not normal. I broke up with the girl I was with at that time and jumped right into another unhealthy relationship right after that happened. And, just so many changes happened right in like a week or two period. I handled myself really well for the first week or two before his funeral. I just kept it to drinking. I actually, because of all the money I was saving, I was able to help out with the funeral. I paid for the funeral. And to this day, that is the highlight of my life. That's probably the best thing I've done with my life is put myself in a position where I could send off my brother in that way. And we got to the funeral. I helped out with the funeral a lot, and that took a lot out of me. Um, and at this point, like I said, I wasn't even smoking weed. I didn't even fuck with weed like that. And I remember, like, maybe a day or two after he passed away, somebody offered me a joint, and for the first time in 2 or 3 years, I can remember thoroughly enjoying that weed, not getting paranoid, and just being thankful to not feel in any way. And after that, I was hanging out with one of my other buddies, and at this point, I probably hadn't done cocaine in a couple of years. And he's like, "Oh, we got some cocaine." And he's like, just be careful. I know you've had problems with drugs in the past. Like, don't get back into it. And I was like, fuck that, man. No, I got this. And I I went. I partied with him. I did the cocaine, and I felt nothing in the best way possible. And it probably took me 2 weeks from that night, that first line, to start looking for crack. I had a friend who smoked crack a lot, and I had tried it a couple times previous with him. Never really was my thing, but like I said, it took me 2 weeks, I want to say, of buying $100 bags of cocaine and buying them a couple times a night, to looking at this and being like, wait a minute, I know a guy and I know a place to go get the same drug that's 10 times stronger and 10 times cheaper. Like, what the fuck am I doing with this bag of cocaine? And slowly the crack started working its way into my routine, and it's all I cared about. It's all I cared about. I didn't give a fuck about a job. I had ways to get money. I had ways to trade for the crack. I didn't need a job. I had a car, and I had people who enabled me, and not out of anything but love and what they thought was best for me, but that enabling, you know, giving me gas money, that kind of stuff. Okay, I'll go use that gas money to put gas in my car, because if I go drive these guys around that are selling me the drugs, I can have them feed me crack. Instead of buying $30 worth of crack, I'll just put $30 of gas in the car, and I'll get $100 worth of crack for driving them around all night. And you know that put me in some fucked up situations. There was a lot of people I knew that ended up committing some pretty shitty crimes, and being around that. And as I was driving these people around high on crack, I was driving them around to do some not so great things, got involved in some not so great things. I was never affiliated with a gang, but I was definitely involved in the life for probably about a year of what those guys got into, simply because that's who I hung around. That's who I wanted to be around, and they gave me what I wanted. They had the crack that I wanted, so I put myself in that situation again, and you know, no real friends there, just getting using people, and for a year it would just go on like that, and the hits of crack got bigger. The bags of coke that I bought got less and less because I didn't care about it. I would always go to the bar, and my first thing was, I'm gonna go to the bar and I'm gonna have one drink tonight, and that's gonna be it. I'm just gonna have the one drink. As soon as it didn't take me getting drunk, and that's what I always thought was crazy. It didn't take me getting drunk. It took that first like half a beer, and I knew in my heart and in my head, I'm going to go get cocaine or crack tonight. So I'd always say to myself, like, look, man, I can't go get the crack again. I can't do that. Not the crack. So I'd go buy like a 50 bag, 100 bag Coke. I would do 2 fucking lines of that thing, and I would roll it up in my sock and be like, this isn't doing shit for me. And I would drive my way down back to the hood, back to Trenton, and I would go get crack. It was all I cared about. It's all I wanted. And I would, say, I'm gonna go get this small bag, get this like little rock of crack. And every time I pulled up, I remember the fucking dealer would be like, dude, you're giving me $40 right now. You sure you don't want to give me 200? I'm like, why would I give you $200? He's like, because you're going to be here 5 more times. And I was like, get the fuck out of here. And sure fuck enough, 24 hours later, 48 hours later, no sleep in between, and I'm still going back to the same fucking guy. Still doing the same fucking shit. you know. And fuck, man, it was just, I remember a lot of it, but I don't remember a lot of it. It's hard to explain, and there's definitely a feeling when you get sober of like, I know that was me and I take responsibility for my actions, but like at the same time, there's nothing in the world that could make me behave that way other than drugs. And man, while I was in like that drugged out autopilot zombie mode, I hurt a lot of people. You know, like I was terrible to my grandparents, who wanted to help me and extend help to me, and I used that help for the wrong reasons. I hurt my parents because they just wanted to see me get better, and I always somehow flipped it and turned it around into being their fault, even though fucking there was no way it was their fault. I was terrible to the girlfriend I had at the time. Um, I put her in terrible situations. I brought her out. I drive her out sometimes. Every once in a while, I'd even go get the crack with me, and she didn't even use. You know, she just like, I felt so shitty being alone. Like I would make her stay up to like watch me and to make sure I wasn't gonna overdose, because I always thought I was gonna overdose because I was that kind of paranoid fuckhead. And yeah, like I had no regard for anybody. I didn't give a fuck, and it was everybody's fault and not mine. It was not my fault. My brother passed away. Fuck you all. It's all my fault. That's all it is, and that's all it's ever gonna be. And it was like that, and I got to a point where I was ready to kill myself. I just wasn't going to because my brother had. You know, I couldn't sleep, and part of the reason why I think I liked uppers so much because they wouldn't let me sleep, because I had watched the video of my brother killing himself, of him, um, committing suicide with a gun, and it was very graphic. And every time I would go to sleep, I would see that. And so I was like, all right, fuck it. I don't want to sleep. Like, I'm going to stay up all the time. And so I had severe undiagnosed PTSD from that as well. And just fucking absolute narcissistic behavior. And it went on like that. Like I said, just being ready to die. And like, I'm not going to kill myself, but I got to a point where I was smoking crack in front of people who had smoked crack for 30, 40 years. And they would look at the way I was smoking crack and say, dude, you can't smoke crack like that. And I would be like, well, the fuck are you talking about? How are you going to tell me how to smoke my crack? They're like, dude, I've been smoking crack for a long time. Like, you can't smoke crack like that. It's not sustainable. You're going to die. Like, that's how you kill yourself. And I would tell them, like, that's what I'm trying to do. I am ready. Like, that's what I want. You know, I wasn't in it for the long run. I didn't want that forever. And, I got to a point, and this is now, I want to say August, yeah, August, maybe end of July 2023. I got to a point where I was like losing my shit. So I checked myself into the state-run facility in New Jersey, and I was there for 6 days. I AMA'd early. I didn't want to be there. I met a crack smoking friend in there. So all I did was make friends that smoked crack in the same area that I was in. As soon as I got out, I went on like a grand old run with her. Um, and she was there for the first time I had a seizure. It was right after I got out of that facility, because I smoked crack the way I wanted to smoke crack. I wouldn't listen to anybody about their advice or their opinions. And I had a seizure. I didn't even know I had a seizure. Um, I just kind of woke up, and she was like, dude, you just know you had a fucking seizure? And I was like, no, I didn't. She brought me to the fucking hospital, and I was there for all like 2 hours and just left. I didn't want to be there. It wasn't long after that, it got to a point where I was just smoking with anybody, and I had this person in my car, and she was smoking out of her pipe. My pipe broke in my hand, and we're sitting outside of fucking Walmart because there I drove them there because they're about to go in to rob the Walmart, like, of clothes and shit, so they could trade for crack. And I had no idea she was smoking fentanyl out of her pipe. And so we're about to go into Walmart. I'm like, hey, I need to use your pipe. My pipe broke. I hit her pipe, and, you know, from my point of view, I hit her pipe. I, like, had this big rush, and then I lean up, and I'm like, okay, are we going into Walmart? And from her point of view, I hit this pipe, I pass out, and I pretty much die. And She has to Narcan me 4 times because there's fentanyl in that pipe, and wasn't used to it. She Narcan me 4 times, and so when I get up and I say, "Are we going into Walmart?" She looks at me and she says, "You just died," and I'm like, "Get the fuck out of here, man! No, I didn't. What are you talking about? Like, are we gonna go get these clothes or not?" And she pulls out like from in between her lap 4 fucking empty Narcans. She's like, "No, you just died," and that haunted the fuck out of me. I didn't even know I died. Like there's all these stories about, oh, you lay flashes before your eyes. None of that. Like I just passed out and started not breathing. That was it. And I think that scared the shit out of me. And realizing like how fast this death was going to be and how like, how without warning it was going to come. And after that, you know, I wish I could say I stopped and got help, but I didn't. I probably had 2 more seizures in the next 2 months. And around, I want to say early November, it was probably the day after Halloween. So I was doing all right before Halloween in 2023. I went to a Halloween party with my buddy. We got a bag together. We said we weren't gonna, got a bag together of Coke. Of course, I ended up on crack. And, probably, 16 hours after this party, I'm still awake, driving around on November 1st, the next day, and like I'm smoking crack, and I feel like that seizure feeling coming on. So I drive myself back to that facility I checked myself into for 6 days. I ran inside. I was like, I'm about to have a fucking seizure. They freaked out. They called the ambulance. You know, ambulance and cops show up. They're both, they both talk to me. The ambulance takes my fucking vitals, and even though I had them called, they're like, "Oh, you need to go to the hospital." But now I'm coming down. Now I'm paranoid. Now I'm anxious. Now I just want another hit of crack. So I'm like, "No, I'm not going to the hospital." And the police officers look at me and they say, "Look, if you don't go to the hospital right now, we are going to book you for a DUI because you drove here on crack." And I looked at them and I said, "I don't know what you're talking about. I smoked all that crack in this parking lot," which is a fucking lie. But of course, they had no evidence. So they're just kind of like, "What the fuck ever, dude. Like, whatever floats your boat, good luck." And, the last thing they said was, if you're not going to check into the facility right now, you need to have somebody drive you home. And so I was staying with my grandparents at the time, and my 90-year-old grandfather had to come pick me up. And it was just a fucking shit show. And that was my rock bottom. I was driving home for 30 minutes from that facility back to his house, and my 90-year-old grandfather, who really doesn't have any idea what's going on. He's just, you can tell he's scared and nervous. He's driving my car home, and I'm in the passenger seat of my car with crack stains all over. There's probably a broken pipe under my seat. There's probably crushed up crack all over the floor that I had yet to carpet surf for. And I got home and I decided that day like things were going to change. Like I needed help. That was the last time I smoked crack. Not the last time I drank. For the next 2 days, I continued getting drunk, but I would not allow myself to touch cocaine or crack. And on November 3rd, I flew out here to Los Angeles to come to a facility in Hollywood Hills to come get sober and come get clean. And that was the best decision I ever made in my life. And I call it a God shot because I just looked up like high-end rehabs on Google, and the first place that popped up was that place, and they were phenomenal towards me. My mom and my grandparents were scared shitless that I was going to leave that facility, that in-state facility that day and continue just doing what I had been doing. But, I told them, no, like this is going to be different. Like I'm going to find a better place where I'm not going to find people to smoke crack with. And I did. And I think that's a God shot because in all honesty, I did want to keep smoking crack and I didn't care about anything. But that decision right there, like that moment of like, even though I was high as fuck, like that moment of like things have to change. I don't know where it came from. I would like to say a part of that's probably my brother, but fuck, man, that one moment changed my entire life. My entire life. I flew out here and I was crying. My mom dropped me off, and I had tears in my eyes. I just had no idea what was going to happen. I was scared. I was vulnerable at the lowest point in my life. But these people, they took me in. They took me in with open arms, and they were great. I was so lucky. The people I was in rehab with, like the other clients were phenomenal. I still talk to one or two of them to this day. And I remember being there for 3 days and deciding to myself, even though I'd been so scared for my mom to drop me off, I decided to myself, I'm not going back to New Jersey, no matter what it fucking takes. And that was such a scary thought to have, but like I knew it had to be true. And like I like to keep myself alive, like that's what had to happen. And so I did my 30 days there, and I was the most willing, I was the most respectful. Like I helped around the house, like I showed up to every group. I just wanted it. I fucking wanted it so bad. And I was so happy to be sober. And it sucked because I had to confront my brother's death for the first time in a year and a half since he had passed away. I had to confront all the people I fucked over and all the shit that I buried deep down. But I like enjoyed doing it in a way, and I don't know if that makes sense. I have my story with recovery has been so much different than a lot of the people I hear. There's not been a day where I've woken up sober and thought this is not it for me. Like this is just since the first day, this has just been it. Like I love this. I'm so grateful every day. Like just like a complete switch has flipped in me. Um, and it's enabled me to just take my life to completely new levels that I never thought I was capable of. At least when I started using, I always thought I was capable when I was a child, but I kind of once I started using, I was like, oh yeah, that's all a fluke. I was just a smart kid, like it didn't mean anything. But I got my confidence back. That's the biggest thing, and that confidence, you know, takes a while. It doesn't come in that first couple weeks. It doesn't come in that first 30 days for me. I fucking, I had to work hard. I had to show up to groups. I had to do the therapy. But I came in with this mindset of like these groups, this therapy, this thing. I'm gonna take, even if it fucking sucks and this facilitator is grinding my fucking gears, I'm gonna take one thing away from your group today that I can carry with me and change myself. Now you gotta imagine if you're in a rehab facility, you're doing 3 groups a day, which is light. Some do 4 or 5. Let's say you're doing 3 groups a day, 5 days a week, 4 weeks a month. That's 60 new things if you take one thing from each group. 60 new things I'm implementing into my life to change myself as a person in the first month. Now, mind you, I complete this first month program and then I go do sober living. So I'm still doing these groups and I'm still doing PHP. Um, and, it accumulated over time. And I would say probably about the 4 or 5 month mark, like who I was as a person, I who I am now is I feel to be my true self. And I'm coming and learning about my true self and coming into that person. But I don't recognize the person who I was when I was using. And that's not to flake on any accountability in any sense. I take full responsibility for my actions, but it is one of the things that keeps me sober is the fear of becoming somebody that I can't control or somebody that I don't recognize. And that being me. That's a very scary thing for me. And I think that fear alone is just part of what keeps me like showing up to fucking work every day, wanting the next thing. When I get what I want, I like wanting the next thing, but also being happy with the journey. And there's, as an addict, I will say a lot of this is kind of learning how to deal with like that incessant desire to always have more and to always do more, because I'll get sober for 30 days and like that'll be my big milestone, and all of a sudden it's not enough. Like it's not enough anymore. I need the next thing right away. And so I had to teach myself like to enjoy this journey, to stop and smell the roses, to appreciate the little changes that I see in not only myself but in the way that people treat me because of who I'm becoming. And you know, it's brick by brick. It really is fucking brick by brick. And brick by brick, day by day, you know, it builds up. And it doesn't seem like it's building up. But I'm at 11 months today. Today's my 11 months. And it doesn't feel like 11 months. It feels like I've been having a great time for the last 11 months, and I've made more progress in my life than I ever have. And it's gone by in a blink of an eye. Now, if you had told me 11 months, when I'd first started, it would have seemed like a fucking lifetime. It would have seemed like a lifetime. But now it seems like nothing. And I have so much cool shit to show for these 11 months that I would not have had and I did not have. As far as my brother, man, that shit hurts. And that's always going to hurt. that loss is never gonna not. That loss is always not gonna sit right with me, I should say. He was young. He was my age, so there's no like getting around it with like, oh, it was supposed to happen. Like if anybody was supposed to die young, it was supposed to be me and not him. So there's a feeling of guilt from that, and that's never gonna sit right with me. But at the same time, I've come to terms with it, and I've come to terms with that the fact that I don't want his death to take my life too, and I know he wouldn't want that either. And he would want the best for me, and he would want me to keep doing what I'm doing now. And that's one of the biggest things for me, because there are days where I feel like I'm having a hard time motivating myself. All right, fuck doing it for me. I'll do it for him. Because I'll take the opportunity to live for both of us if I can, and I want him to live through me, and to extend the good that I can do for him, and to help people with schizophrenia, with drug addiction, with the kind of things that he and I um, have dealt with, and having that goal in mind, I've curated an entire life built around that stuff. I work as a registered alcohol and drug technician. I do that 5 days a week. I work as a group facilitator. It's like a counselor of sorts for the detox center that I work at on one of my days off. I run that group, and that's I love doing that. I feel like I help a lot. And now I also do this podcast as like my creative project on the side. And this has all happened in 11 months. And that's not to mention me building up the connections with my family again. My parents and I are on fantastic terms now. I love them to death. They help me whenever, whenever they can. I did just crash my dad's car last week, or 2 weeks ago. Sorry, um, and he's not the happiest about it. But it wasn't a big fight like it used to be. It's just like accidents happen. You're not high. You're not drunk. Shit happens. It's okay. And we kind of just hugged it out, laughed about it. I don't. God bless him for laughing about it. I wouldn't have been able to. But I have my parents back. I'm starting to get my good friends back that I had growing up that didn't want anything to do with me anymore. I am having contact with them again now, and I've made a life full of new, amazing fucking people out here in Los Angeles. My coworkers are great. The people I've met in the 12-step programs are phenomenal. The people who helped me get sober are great. It's again, I know this is different from my sobriety, but my sobriety, man, has just been nothing but good. And it may not be like that for everybody, but I've had hard days, I've had hard weeks, but like that hole you're in when you're in a depression, or like you might have anxiety, and your constant baseline mood is just fucking upset, sad, angry, depressed, and good things might happen, but it's fleeting, right? It's flip-flop for me now. Like my baseline mood, like I'm always happy, grateful, and something really bad might happen, but at the same time, like it doesn't take away my baseline mood of being happy and grateful anymore. And I wake up every day, even if something bad happened the day before, with like a renewed sense of purpose, a renewed sense of motivation, a renewed sense of accomplishment for what I have done. And I've found this beautiful, beautiful in between point of wanting more, wanting the next thing, like wanting this podcast to get bigger, wanting to move up in my job, wanting to get this group facilitating going to other facilities as well. Like I have that, but I'm also so appreciative of what I'm doing now. I'm appreciative of sitting down and taking the journey. I'm appreciative of the work I do now, and I'm happy to be doing the work I do now. And to have that balance, man, I feel fucking unstoppable. I feel fucking unstoppable. I feel like I have the world at my fingertips again, just like I did when I was younger, and I never thought I was going to have that feeling again. And I'm so beyond grateful, so fucking beyond grateful for all of it. It's just it's a crazy feeling. It's all these things I never thought I was going to have back. And I got all of it back, except my brother. But other than my brother, all of it back. And more than I ever had. I have my first apartment out in Los Angeles. I've always wanted to get out of New Jersey, and this has enabled me to do that. And I have my own apartment. I take care of myself. I don't ask people for money. I think my mom helps pay my phone bill, but that's about it, and it's a great feeling to be able to say that I'm here and I'm doing this when 11 months ago I was having my 90-year-old grandfather drive me home like a fucking toddler in my own car while I was high on crack without him knowing. It's If somebody had told me that a year ago, I would have said you're fucking insane. But yeah, I think this podcast is beautiful in so many ways because I get to share my story like today, and you know, going down the line, you're obviously going to hear a lot of other people's stories. But I hope some of you guys don't just listen to this and hear it as somebody else's story, but I hope you take away something from it. Kind of like I was saying, how I took things away from people's groups. Like I hope you take something away from this and that realize that there's no hole too deep to climb out of, and rock bottom. It was actually Michael said this last podcast, and it was a fucking phenomenal quote. It was rock bottom stops when you stop. Rock bottom stops when you stop digging. That's what it was. So it's up to you. Rock bottom can be now, or you can keep going. And I'm so grateful that I decided to start climbing instead of keep digging. And I hope every single person who watches this can feel that too and get to that point too, where you realize life may suck right now, but it's not gonna always, especially if you put the work in. And there's not a whole lot of resources out there for that, and especially not in New Jersey. There's very little hopeful and inspirational stories to go off of out in New Jersey. But out here, it's a completely different world, and I hope to extend the reach of this and the things I've learned out here to other people. Um, so I hope all you guys can take something away from this podcast, today's, Michael's, and every single one going forward, because whatever you're going through it's not too bad to get out of. And it might suck really fucking bad, more than anything I've ever experienced even, but you can still get out of it. You don't have to give up. And I don't want anyone to give up, and I hope to extend hope to people. I do. I want people to have that same aha moment that I had, that holy fuck, I can fix this. Holy fuck, I can get out of this. And I that's all I want in my life anymore. Fuck the money, fuck everything else. That's all I want. Because that was that aha moment is life changing. But I think that's going to do it for today. I'm going to extend another thank you to Ritz Recovery for allowing me to record and providing me with the tools necessary to do that. The recording team has been phenomenal. Thank you guys. And today I'm also going to thank everybody who played a hand in getting me through probably like the first 6 or 7 months when it was really up and down. Shout out to Axel again. Shout out to Connor, and I want to extend a shout out to my friend Josh, because he was big in that too. And yeah, very grateful for all you guys. Thank you guys, and I'll see you guys next time on A Dose of Hope.